Hi Ryan, thanks for accepting my request to answer this small interview around learning analytics and its impact on learning effectiveness.
My pleasure, Raman. Anytime.
Yeah, yeah. I've already given you a detailed brief around what learning analytics is and how it is impacting today's organizations. This interview will have four different sections. The first one is going to be learning landscape, helping us understand what's the learning landscape like today in organizations. The
Mm-hmm.
second will be around the scope of learning analytics in today's context.
Mm-hmm.
What are the different aspects or elements of LA that we've been using day in and day out?
Okay.
And finally, what kind of impact do you see learning analytics is contributing to overall learning agenda in
Sure.
organizations? So
Sure.
the questions will revolve around that, and they are simple questions, but I'm sure the complexity will lie in what you have to share with me. So the more detailed way you share, the better for me, because that is when I'm going to get a lot of meat, right?
Sure.
And in case you don't understand any question, feel free and ask me to repeat. I'll probably paraphrase that and share it again.
That'll be good. Okay. Great.
Yeah, yeah,
Thanks, Raman.
yeah. So let's start. Let's start with learning landscape. So how has learning landscape evolved in your organization?
Uh, I'll respond to this both at my organization and also as a learning practitioner, um, having talked to people within the industry, and I'll talk from a separate angle, which is as a learner myself, right? So as a practitioner, as someone who is helping people in their development journey on the one side, to how I view the learning landscape has changed or is changing or evolving as a learner myself. And there's not much difference between the two. One of the things that I've noticed in recent times is access to learning, from being extremely restricted, controlled, and offered at the will of the company, so to speak.
Yeah.
Today, learners have a lot more flexibility in absorbing the content from a variety of platforms and from a variety of sources, which is one of the biggest changes I've seen. Now, another thing that I've noticed in recent times is if your company is incapable of partnering with, let's say, a Udemy,
Mm-hmm.
your employees will not wait endlessly for you to draw up the contract, sign up for a catalog, and make that available to them.
Mm-hmm.
They are most likely going to subscribe for content on their own. So
Yeah.
basically, what I guess I'm trying to summarize is learning has evolved from being a very push centric, mechanism to a very pull based approach where learners will look for content that is needed by them, suitable for them, which resonates with them, and absorb that content at their convenience, really. And I don't mean this only for virtual classes alone. Like, I remember in my first job way back in 2005, my team leader made it compulsory for all of us to have on our goal sheets one course that we will attend every quarter, and this had to be an instructor led training. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times I would look up the course calendar and I would not find classes that are relevant for me, but because I have a goal to meet, I would go sit through some program, just attend the training and come back. But then, even this holds good even in instructor led classes. People will not go sit in a class just because they have to tick a box or check a box. That's how I see learning to have evolved, both in my company and also personally as a learner. Like yesterday, I was looking at something on Udemy. I quickly compared it with Pluralsight. I quickly looked at YouTube to see some free videos. Basically, I'm trying to say, you don't have learning is no more a privilege and entitlement. You have access to free content, paid content, and it's available at your discretionary will with the access to internet. That's really my 2 cents on that.
Great, great. I think you've in a very capsule format shared what learning landscape is like today.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything more you want to share? Because the second question I think is in sync with what you already shared. So, anything more
Yeah.
that you want to add to the technology
Yeah.
bit?
Yeah, I would like. I'll talk to you about an incident from 2008. Okay. Um, or maybe it's happened a couple times in the jobs that I've had, but maybe something more recent. Like 2008 is a long time ago, but I'll go back to maybe 2015. So when I joined Lowe's, a Fortune 40 home improvement retailer, they had a 200,000 employee base out of North America.
Mm-hmm,
They were setting up their India operations in Bangalore.
mm-hmm,
What this meant was there was history, there was access to content, there was so much of learning available already.
mm-hmm,
But because the because of certain tax and regulatory implications, I don't want to go into the details of it, but basically it has to do with taxation for companies that were setting up outside the US.
mm-hmm,
And in brief, what it means is, if you're doing business outside the US, do you pay taxes in the US, or do you pay taxes in India, or do you pay it in both places?
mm-hmm,
And this was applicable for all kinds of services that we avail from the home office.
mm-hmm,
So why I gave you this example was because the learning management system was paid for in the US. There was a tax that was paid to the US government because we procured that product.
yeah.
But if we were to deploy it for India, the Indian government would now expect that for those services we would pay taxes. And so we can't get rid of them. And I'm not the best person to speak about finance and taxation. This could be wrong, but this is what I gathered from my conversation. But did that stop us from accessing any content on any online platforms? Certainly not. We accessed the entire catalog that was hosted out of the learning management system in the US, but we used a separate platform, the vendors platform. So just to make it simpler, Skillsoft published all their courses to Lowe's in America using Lowe's learning management system, which was SuccessFactors.
Yeah.
But for India, we spoke to Skillsoft and took access to their own LMS and made that available to our employees. So technology has allowed for users to consume content at their convenience, to browse through content. You don't have to sit and play back a whole course to figure out if that's what you want today. With modern authoring tools, you have access to view the various course segments. You can pick modules that you want. And also, one of the things that I've very successfully deployed is, if I have a, let's say, 3-hour course about how to write emails, but then if my problem is really a very focused issue about salutations and replying to all and when to CC, I can just pull out that section, like a URL to just that small clipping, which is chapter 3.1.1,
Mm-hmm.
and then make that available to my audience as well. So all of that, in technology, has really helped in learners being on top of their game and having access to learning what they want and how they want.
Sure. Sure. That's interesting, especially the piece about skills of deployment. It was interesting to know and
Yeah.
understand the logic. Let's move into the next question, which is how easy have transitions been when it comes to virtual learning and its environments? No, I'm sure all of us, which is Generation X and Millennials, Generation Y, who've been in L&D space, especially between the times 2007, 2008 to 2019 today, we've seen the transition of how over a period of time the dependency or the relevance of online learning has increased drastically. So
Yeah.
coming back to the question, which is how easy have the transitions been to virtual learning systems?
Mm. Well, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how easy the transitions have been, but it's almost impossible to talk about it without speaking of a few challenges as well. So I'll
Yeah,
just talk about both in that context.
yeah.
Um, Adoption has been fairly good, at least in my personal opinion. If you were to offer me a class, um, let's say on Python, which is going to be by a famous practitioner in Python, but then you have limited seats, and that's going to happen. And this is an instructor-led class, and that's going to be scheduled in December. I would much rather prefer to go online, browse through a course published by this great author, and access it immediately in the moment when I need it most,
Yeah.
and not really wait for it for 2-3 months. So in that sense, because the learner is urgent, he has a sense of urgency, he has a personal goal to accomplish. The adoption has been really quick and easy. Uh, where I see some challenges is in the fact that one size doesn't fit all.
Hmm.
So when you think about virtual learning, you're always worried about who should you actually partner with to be your company's preferred learning partner for virtual content, right? So should I go with Linda, which is cutting edge, modern, very good video based learning sessions in interview formats, or should I look at someone like Skillsoft, who's slightly more traditional in the way they push content, virtual content. So the challenge is with who should you go with, and what sort of combination of vendors and partners should you have. That's one. um, the other biggest challenge, again, as a learning practitioner, I would say, is um, should we be looking at um, should we be looking at providing any kinds of inputs to people on how they can should we run some. So one of the things we did with Lowe's was, when we brought in the whole online learning piece,
Hmm.
we scheduled some learning cafes. So we set up some booths at regular times near the cafeteria, so people that had queries and questions on how they should ask for a user ID and password, how they should browse through courses, how they should add something to their learning plans, all of that was really taught to them informally, like a booth that you would visit at a conference. So those are just some high level challenges that I can recall from exposing people to virtual learning and platforms.
Sure, sure. Just out of curiosity, was there any form of resistance from people when, especially the ones who've always been used to a live training, to this new format of learning?
Well, I wouldn't call it so resistance as much as I would call it um, the need for support. So, what I mean by that is, while online learning can help you to a certain degree or to a certain extent, I think you miss the opportunity to clarify certain doubts, ask some follow-through questions with the class, with the instructor who's available with you in class. So from that point of view, learners still crave for some amount of classroom training. So I wouldn't really say there was resistance, but I've encountered people that have said, I've taken this Python class online, but I would like something which is a version 2.0 or 3.0 to be done as a classroom training.
Got it. Got it. Nice. So I think we've got a fair understanding of learning landscape in your organization, and I'm sure uh, uh, what you shared can also be different from one HR practitioner to another. So
Right.
it'll be interesting to know information from similar organization, but from a different person also. Therefore helping me understand perspectives of how a specific situation was. Yeah, you wanted to share something, Ryan?
No, I was just about to say that I'd be happy to connect you to some people at Lowe's back then, and other places as well,
Yeah,
that I can connect you with. So that way you can get different responses from different users and what their reactions were as well.
Thank you, thank you. I'll definitely need as many leads as possible. So yeah, be it. Let's move into the second part of this interview, which is scope of learning analytics. Ryan, uh,
Sure.
have you been using platform based data or learning data for analytics purpose? One, and if you are using, what's the purpose of the same? Like, where do you use it? What do you do with it?
So a couple of things, right? So having access to the data is always a given, right? So if you have access to a platform, it is going to give you some sort of dashboards, some kind of data inputs that will tell you things about your users. So I'll tell you a couple of ways in which we've been using it. One of the most um, basic uses for that data is to check on usage. So if I'm spending X amount of dollars on procuring a license, I'd like to see how many people are actually using it, how many people are actually spending how much time on it, and those kind of basic matrices around usage.
Mhm.
But also, what it allows me to explore is what kind of content is being consumed, and then for me as a learning practitioner to have more meaningful conversations with my stakeholders, the businesses, the HR business partners, and others to say, okay, looks like these are the top 5 skill gaps in your teams, and those kind of things. But
Mhm.
um, mostly on usage, mostly on the kind of courses, mostly on the time people are spending. It also helps to know what kind of experience levels people have, like in terms of adoption. Do you have the more senior, seasoned employees of the company that have spent more than 5 years even looking at it? Or is it really to do with people that have just joined the company? Because a lot of times, we're all human, and so when something new is handed down to us, we are quick to go access, explore, give
Yeah,
it a shot.
yeah,
But then 3 months down the line, 7 months down the line, the password is just, I've forgotten my password, I don't know how to reset it, or for whatever reasons, I don't really access it. So those kind of data is what I usually um, look for.
sure, sure. So there were four words that I picked up from what you explained. To be able to connect the word purpose, are was first one was usage, which is nothing but the consumption,
Yes.
how the learners are consuming. The second one was courses that they are consuming. So what are they consuming? So I'm able to understand the how part. I'm able to understand the what part, and the third one is time spent. How long have I been able? Has the learner been on the course, and therefore has the learner completed the course within the time span offered? The last word being adoption. How easily are they able to log in and get onto the system? I mean, the learning management system. And the other one is having logged in, how long have they been there? Or is it just an instant action? Or is it over a period of time? Have they sustained the intent and interest over a period of time? Am I right
Right,
in rephrasing
right,
this?
right, right.
All right, great, great. Uh, so, how will using learning analytics help you achieve your portfolio purpose, or even organizational purpose for that matter?
Uh, well, in a lot of ways, I mean, now, let's say, for example, at one point in time, our company was focused on building a value proposition for
Mhm,
employees, for prospective employees.
mhm,
And so, as a part of that value proposition, we spoke about how um, this is a place where you will be exposed to plenty of learning opportunities,
mhm,
right? And so the goal was to make learning accessible, and therefore to be able to measure against that goal to say, if I have something available, how many are using it, and those kind of things. So
uh-huh,
in that sense, yeah. I'll talk about a more focused example. We used to hire a lot of people from colleges, right, from freshers.
yeah.
Now typically we hire from the computer science stream, but sometimes we make exceptions and also hire from, let's say, electronics or from other areas of engineering.
Mhm,
Now, most companies follow this practice of taking everybody through a rigorous campus to corporate,
Yeah.
um, which will teach you the basics of all the technologies that are run in that particular organization. And we were no different. We did something similar, but turns out people that had already learned computer science, which would be a majority of our audience, didn't really gain much from that 40-day training.
Okay.
So what we did was we made learning available virtually to them by
Mm-hmm.
partnering with the e-learning provider.
Uh-huh.
But then one of the things I realized when I pulled some reports was people were going in every day, they were adding new courses, but they were not spending more than 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 12 minutes, and but they had like 20 courses added to their learning plans.
Uh-huh.
And then this allowed me to go back and just consult with all those students to say what is going on, because I haven't seen anyone complete a course and all of that. And then it dawned through those conversations that they were not able to find the right kind of courses. They were not sure of how to browse for them, and what they should be looking for and all of that. So then we had to make some course corrections to say, um, we will pick 6 courses aligned to Java and push those as a channel. So everybody that needs to learn Java will have to go through those 6 courses and nothing else, making it easier for our learners to be able to access. So, I've used data differently. Sometimes I've used it to measure engagement levels of employees. Sometimes I've used it to measure the learning ratios. Sometimes, so it all depends on the need at that point in time.
Sure, sure. So, what you've shared is something new for me, which is around the campus to corporate program and how e learning was the method used, and therefore, how you could use analytics to rig the entire experience and make it easier or make it simpler for the learners. So, even this example is very new, and I'm sure of great value to my purpose per se. Uh, so from what I sense, all that you've been sharing is presently you're using learning analytics from both descriptive aspect as well as predictive purpose. So
Mhm.
descriptive in the sense how people are adopting, consuming, and completing a specific course,
Yeah,
and predictive in the sense will a person complete this course or not,
yeah,
is this course suitable to this learner or not,
yeah.
and how or to what course is an individual going to move into from
Mhm.
wherever he or she is today.
Yeah,
So am I right in summarizing it this way?
agree, absolutely.
All right, is there anything else that you want to add on this entire front?
No, nothing else, Aman.
All right,
Nothing else.
great, great. We'll move into the next piece, which is around elements of learning analytics. I'm sure the only word that must be running both our brains at this point in time is learning analytics. And trust me, I've been doing interviews for the last 1.5 weeks, and even my dreams has this word learning analytics. So spare me for that.
Yeah.
Uh, what kind of data are you able to gather from the learning
No problem.
dashboard or backend?
Now, are you referring to data that I gather from online learning portals alone, or um, what is your question really about any kind of learning, classroom or anything?
So this is specifically about e-learning or blended
Okay,
learning,
okay,
and it is pointing out at the data that is being captured from the platform
yeah,
um, of a learner. And the data
okay,
can be anything. It can be
mhm,
about his or her consumption, patterns of consumption, time
uh-huh,
span, any of it. So the
okay,
question is, what kind of data are you picking or
mhm,
focusing on to enable your purpose?
okay. Again, this is a very subjective question, Aman, because it depends on the need of the hour and the time of the day, and to whom and how I need this data. I decide on what kind of data points and elements I should be looking at. So, one of the things I definitely look at is, um, the cost element of it, like the cost to utilization ratio. So I try to see what how many people are actually uh, using it for the kind of fees that we're paying, and if there is any value in it, right? So that's one of the things that I look at. I'm looking at what are the top um, courses that are consumed. So you have modern dashboards that throw out how many hours were spent on which of those courses and which are our top 5 courses viewed or accessed across the company. um, I'm also looking at how much time people are spending on it, and if it's
Mhm.
realistic. So, are people, and these lead to further conversations with your stakeholders and businesses, because if people are spending way too much time to complete a course, is there a problem in understanding? Is there a problem with time, or are they just busy with work? So, those kind of questions come up in conversation. So depends on who I'm talking to and what purposes. But I'm looking at adoption, definitely. I'm looking at consumption for sure. I'm looking at completion. I'm also using it to see engagement levels, and overall if this has helped improve performance levels in within the teams.
All right. All right. I think that pretty much answers the next question as well. So we'll skip that. Uh, the next one is interesting, and I'm sure something that you rack your brain a lot about, which is what are the key performance indicators you're considering to understand the performance of the learning platform or of the learning offering?
So I would say the first one, and this is my views, I would really look at improved performance. Now, adult learners really want to learn something if it is going to help them.
Mhm.
And while your engagement may be great, maybe you'll complete a course, which is great. You'll get a certificate signed by somebody who's running the course from the University of Wharton, which is awesome. Overall, what matters to me is, have I been able to translate this piece of learning into my workplace or into my personal life,
Mhm.
and what kind of results those have shown for me? Have I been able to accomplish that particular goal that I set out to accomplish? So
Mhm.
improved performance has to be my number one measure of success for deploying any kind of a platform. um, I would also look at it on some of the softer aspects around engagement as well as retention of employees within the company. So, providing them with access to cutting edge technology and platforms to learn as means of keeping them engaged with the company, keeping them motivated to want to work there, those kind of things.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. My assumption um, to one of the KPIs that you referred, which is improved performance, is improved performance in the job or the KRA that an individual is doing in your organization, and that is being validated by uh, a feedback methodology, uh, uh, which should give you an indication of whether there's an improvement or whether there is an upgradation of knowledge in this individual. Am I right?
Absolutely, and we can talk about a simple example. Everyone's talking about the future of work,
Yeah.
right? So people are always talking about skilling for future. Bots are going to replace some of those tasks and all of that. So if I make a list of, let's say, 6 skills that everybody in my company should demonstrate
Mhm.
and be exceptional and proficient at, then those are the 6 courses that I will deploy to them, and then I will be able to clearly measure if they are able to translate that learning at the workplace, so that they can remain relevant and things like that. So that's really what I'm trying to say.
Sure, sure. What are the features that are important or critical for virtual learning spaces, according to you?
Uh, So one of the things that I really would like, so it depends on what kind of learning what kind of content I'm absorbing. So if I'm absorbing something that's more technical in nature,
Mm-hmm.
I would really like for the opportunity to be able um, to have a very simple interface, a very simple explanation for things, and most importantly, the opportunity to practice. Right now, you have the see me and the try me. So I can see what you're doing, and you may be making a great dish in your kitchen, but if you can allow me to try it along the way, I'm probably going to retain a lot more and maybe match up to the standards that your cooking is at.
Yeah.
So the seeing and trying is really important. If I'm looking at maybe a soft skill that I'm trying to learn, I'd like for examples to be a little more relevant, examples to be able to speak to me. I want some practical tips. I don't want theories, right? So I would prefer the interface, or really my courses, to be around, okay, here is what it is in theory, but this is a model that you can adopt regardless of where you're going to use
Mm-hmm.
decision making, which is going to be a 5-step model. And
Yeah.
then here are some practice sessions that you can maybe work at your convenience and come back.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm talking more about the content and not really about the interface. But in terms of the interface, or the platform itself, yes, it should be simple and easy to navigate, easy to use. No point in building learning in order to understand how to learn from a learning portal. So just something that's very intuitive, easy for people to access. It should provide for managers and employees to be able to collaborate, like talk to one another through the system to say, hey, I found this, how about you taking a look at this. And for wider sharing and consumption, so if I find something, I should be able to share it with my team and network.
Yeah.
Um, a third very important one, and I was part of some initial conversations on this project, where modern technologies allow, let's say, me as a user, let's say I'm installing a washing machine at my home today, I can record the whole process and upload it,
Mm-hmm.
so that other washing machine installation experts across the country can watch my video and do it at their site wherever they are. And this was particularly very useful for a company like Lowe's, which has tile installation, fridge installation, electrical appliances installation, and everything else. So you don't have to really create a course on how to install. Anybody can record it and upload that back. So those are some of the features that would be great to have on the system.
Sure. Sure. Interesting. And what do you think are your benefits of using learning analytics on a regular basis?
What are the benefits of using learning analytics from a practitioner's point of view, right? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And that could be something that you're experiencing and benefiting today with, or it could also be what you foresee in future it to be like.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that we always struggle with is when you're drawing up the budgets, right? How much money should you keep? How many licenses should you procure? So the analytics will give you a good sense of, should you increase your spend? Should you decrease your spend? Should you some of those elements? But cost aside, I don't mean to only speak about the cost, because the content is equal, if not more important, for you to check.
Mhm.
Is it relevant? Is it recent? Is it complete? Is it accurate? I know of users who've come back to me and said the content on this is really poor, but then there is something else called this. Why don't we subscribe to that, because it's better than this content?
Got it.
So content, definitely. Also looking at as an enabler to learning, uh, it should have less and less dependency on the learning and development team, right? So you don't have to keep running sessions on how to use it, educating people on where to access, how to browse, what to see, what not to see,
Yeah.
and all of that. So
Yeah.
something as simple as that. Those are some of the things that I'd look for.
Sure. Sure. Interesting. Let's hop on to the last part of today's interview, which is impact of learning analytics adoption or learning analytics. I would say utility on learning effectiveness. So, is there a way you're already using learning analytics to? Is there a way you're measuring how learning analytics is contributing to effectiveness of learning? And if yes, then do you only measure to understand how effective it is, or are you also uh, trying to find the ROI of the entire intervention? Yeah, last one.
Um, Actually, it is a very difficult question to answer simply because it varies from project to project and case to case.
Mm-hmm,
Um, Now, let's say with the example that I gave you, which was around the campus to corporate program, right?
mm-hmm,
Definitely we'll look at um, measuring the effectiveness through various parameters, and we'll also look at what is the return on that investment, simply because um, 45 days in class, finding so many trainers to run so many individual topics, paying so much of money for those trainers, vis-a-vis providing access to this online platform which can take care of all your technical needs. So in that particular example, you can definitely assess impact of learning, to measure how effective it is. There are simple assessments to administer before they start the workshop or the program, and then measure them again through an evaluation after. But where it is offered mostly as a service to the entire company, like a catalog of e-learning courses is made available. I guess what I look at is overall adoption, consumption, completion, and just finding ways to measure if they are engaged, if they see learning to be providing any value to them to be better professionals and those kind of things. I don't know if I answered that question, Naman, but if you can probe further, maybe we can engage in a dialogue and see.
uh, yeah, I mean, you've answered it to a greater extent. Another angle that I would want you to help me understand is there any form of feedback that is being collected post intervention to
Yeah.
understand how a learner experienced whatever he or she experienced? And
Yeah.
therefore, in some cases, I'm sure you must be seeking nominations from their managers. So, are the managers also involved in the feedback process?
Yes, absolutely. And again, project to project, so I can talk to you about. So the level one evaluations from the Kirkpatrick model is something that we administer to all users for all training programs that they attend.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a focused, let's say, first time leader program, or potential leader program and things like that, where you have people coming in through nominations, we have some more of a greater degree of evaluation before the workshop, both from the attendee as well as the nominator, or the nominee and the nominator, and then conduct subsequent assessments, gather feedback through the course of the workshop. Let's say it's a 3-month program or a 6-month program.
Mm-hmm.
There is definitely feedback from the manager, feedback at the end of the whole workshop to see if there is any progress in the individual. So definitely through feedback sessions we gather some inputs on effectiveness of the program.
Sure, sure. You also mentioned about Kirkpatrick model. So, uh, do you only use step one, or do you use the entire model and actually show the overall viability or overall ROI of the entire learning platform that you have introduced?
Well, we don't use all 4 levels, and on a case-to-case basis, we look at level 1. In some cases, a combination of level 1, 2, and sometimes perhaps level 3, but that's about it. So, not really level 4. And it's not really across the board. So it's not like, okay, I've deployed Accenture Academy for finance and accounts, and level 1 to 3 is administered. No, it depends on the need of that business if they would like to see something. And
Got it. Got it. I think that throws some light also on the fact that organizations are okay to use level 1, 2, 3 for ROI evals, but 4 and 5 is like and that's something that I've heard from a couple of them is a choice that organization takes whether they really want to do it, because there are multiple factors which contribute to overall learning, and it may not just be the virtual learning platform. So
absolutely.
yeah, I hear you. Good. So I think that's about it with respect to learning analytics. You've been very generous in sharing responses, more importantly many instances and examples of how your organization or how you as a practitioner in your organization has been able to use learning analytics for a developmental purpose of the talent available, talent capital. Yeah.
My pleasure, Raman. I hope you find it useful for your coursework. And I'm always available for follow-up conversations if there's anything that as you transcribe this, if you need any further information or clarification, I'd be happy to share my
Oh,
thoughts.
sure, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.